Hello everybody. Welcome along to the latest edition of Everywhere We Go, Kiddy, a massive Kidderminster Harriers fan podcast with me, Nick Hatton. We have been away for a little while. We've had a bit of a little hiatus for various reasons, but we are back. Bit of a fresh new look. And what better guest could I have for this new relaunch, if you like, than someone who's got a very interesting story to tell from his time at Kidderminster Harriers. It is the former Harriers boss, Phil Brown. Phil, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Nick. I'm fine. Watching with great interest from afar now.
Yes. Well, yeah, I will talk about kind of your assessment of things at the moment a little bit later on, if that's okay.
No
Um,
problem.
First question on this podcast is always the same, and I spoke to you 18 months or so ago. It was on the eve of the Darlington away game of our National League North season, and given that you'd only been at the club a few months, I wonder what your answer to the question is now, having gone through everything. And that question is, what does Kidderminster Harriers mean to you?
Um, a lot of good memories, a lot of interesting scenarios that cropped up. Going to a football club at that level and having a director of football, for instance. I think the way football's expanded over the years, it doesn't matter what level you are. Nobody laughs at that anymore. People think director of football, does that mean? And then chief scouts, and I think you've got to try and cover all the bases with regards. I think the biggest argument at the top level is the recruitment policy of any manager, and that's at the top level. So why not at any other level? I think it doesn't matter what level you go down to. You get the recruitment right, you've got a great chance of, if you've got a coach in place that can manage his way or manipulate his way through games. I think you've got a great chance of winning games of football, and consequently, if you win sufficiently enough games of football, you're going to be at the right end of the division. Um, I think there's a couple of great analogies when you think about over the years teams that have gone on to continually the serial winners of titles or the serial promotion contenders. And one of the teams that I'm going to make reference to is South Shields in the division that you're in, or in the division that we're in. I think since the chairman or the owner has been at that football club, I think he's had six promotions. And when you think about that, he's changed manager on a number of occasions, but the recruitment side of it is the key to the success that they've had. And I think it's so vitally important that why not? When you see a team, and the first question you ask a manager, or the first question you might ask a chairman or a director would be, what's the budget like? Is it competitive this year? That being your job, to try and get that information out. And if you're in the top six with your budget, it depends on where you spend it then, how you
Yeah.
spend it. But if your budget extends to backroom staff, extends to the promotion of the football club, as in the whole caboodle, the whole shebang, as it were, how it looks like from the outside looking in. If you get your recruitment officer, if you get your chief scout, if you get your policies where bringing players to the football club in are right, you've got a great chance of succeeding. There's no doubt about it. So forget about the manager at this moment in time. Go to what's behind him to support him. And I think Kidderminster, it appears, have got that part right at this moment in time. When Charlie Tonks came with me to Peterborough Sports, and obviously he left the football club, went to Fylde first, I thought they'd missed a trick because I watched what Charlie could do from close range and then obviously from afar. And I think you can spot a player at this level. Now, the club might move past Charlie then, as it were, and you understand that. And I suppose that's where Dean Holdsworth has to play his hand, his experience at the higher level. But I keep on going back to it. If you can get a group of people behind you that understand that you bring the right players to me, I'll coach them and I'll manage them, and hopefully take the club to the next level and the next level and the next level after that, then that's the success story I think Kidderminster are basing their plans upon. And I think they're getting it right behind the scenes by the looks of it. Because certainly on the pitch, I've watched you now, I've came up against you twice this season, and I've watched you on two or three occasions as well. And I think you seem to have a coach in place that can change tact, not just before a game, during a game, at any stage. I watched the game recently at Telford when you could have gone a goal ahead and then immediately went up the other end and Telford scored. They went one goal behind, and then the players on the field of play took a grip of the game. But I was watching the way they played, and you didn't have you did have a recognised striker on the field of play, but he was playing out wide.
Mm.
And the two that were playing down the middle were Riley Reynolds and David Davis. And I'm looking, thinking, well, one's a midfield player, one's a 10 basically, or a winger. And you're playing with them two up front. But I was looking at the tactical side of it, and immediately when you went 2-1 up, he then reversed it and put the strikers back up top in the second half. And then when the player was sent off, brought Reece Devine on and went 4-3-3 and seen the game out. Now, for me, that's been astute. It's been tactically aware. It's a coach that seems to understand how the game's moving and twisting and turning during the course of a match. And it was interesting to watch, and I think it's brave. I think it's really brave because you stand to, post-conference or post-game, you go into a press conference, you're going to ask questions, you're going to have to answer them if you've been beaten. But the fortunate thing where Kidderminster are concerned, they've probably won half their games, and therefore he's not going to get probed and asked too many bad questions because you're at the right end of the division.
So if somebody just said the words to you, Kidderminster Harriers, what would be your immediate sort of emotion?
In what we did, disappointment at first, but pride in what we did in the season, where unfortunately, probably on the best run in the history of the club, on a stretch for 14, 15 games undefeated, and then got beaten in the last game. So pride but disappointment at the last game performance, and regret would be the third word. Regret that I didn't get the club over the line and back into the National League, and hopefully back into the Football League where I wanted to be.
We'll talk more about Southport and Chester a little bit later on. But so you decided to stay on after our relegation. How much convincing did you need to stay on, if any?
You always need a level of convincing from the challenge ahead. You want to know that the things are in place for you to give yourself a chance to get promoted, and that was immediately relieved by conversations with Richard Lane and Dean Holsworth, and then and obviously the sticking together of the partnership with me and Neil McDonald. If Neil had decided to move on for whatever reason, I might have thought second about it, but we kept everybody together. We seemed to have a very good plan in place, and the football club, I was learning on the job that the football club was one of the biggest in that division. So why not stay on and give it a shot, and which we did do, but unfortunately we came up against a very strong promotion push from about 3 or 4 clubs in and around us, so it wasn't plain sailing. As you can see, sometimes, the National League, as you've got in the higher divisions, you've got 2 teams that are over 100 points now, and it's absolutely crazy that one of them will go up and the other one might not, because anything can happen in the playoffs. And the same is going to apply in the National League North with regards to South Shields and Fylde. It's absolutely, it's brilliant the way it's working, but you can do it in the divisions that I'm talking about, the National League and the National League North and South, because of the full-time, part-time mentality, the full-time, part-time argument, of which I'm now feeling the pinch with regards to at Peterborough Sports. The fact that part-time football for me is just something I can't really get to grips with. It's something I can't get my head around. Part-time mentality. I've always been full-time mentality, regardless of who I've been playing for, coaching for, managing for. I've always had the mentality that's 24/7. And then to only see a player probably 3-4 hours a week, and then see him on a Saturday, it's a different game. It's a totally different game. And the league tells you that, the full-time teams majority of the full-time teams are at the top end of the division, and the majority of the bigger budgets are at the top end of the division. So it's not actually rocket science, but when it comes down to them finer details, and I'm talking about, how your coach at Kidderminster Harriers manages now, and them finer details are the ones that can get you over the line. And if South Shields do go up and Fylde miss out in the playoffs, everyone's going to say automatically Fylde will get promoted. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a great case for the likes of Kidderminster Harriers, who've been just hovering nicely in third or fourth all season, and not being able to grab a hold of the shirt tails of the front two because they've set such a great pace.
So lots of new faces when we started that season. I've got written down Luke Summerfield, Joe Folks, Paul Downing, David
Yeah,
Davis, Maz
yeah.
Kuyar, Ben Beresford, Reese Devine, Topi as well. How much of that recruitment was down to you identifying players, or because it's a level that you've not managed at before? How much of the sort of the emphasis is on the likes of Dean Holsworth and the others in your staff?
That's where I'm talking about where Charlie Tonks was concerned. He was, and I brought him to Peterborough Sports with me as assistant manager. But his his level of understanding of players at that level, his level of, I mean, everybody can spot the best player. If you go to any game of football and you see the best player on the field of play, people just point to the player, but they're the ones that cost a lot of money. Good scouting and good coaching and good, recruitment are going back to the well and keep drinking the water. Go back and keep on going to see the same player on 3 or 4 occasions because they're the key moments. I keep on saying to one or two of the younger players, you may be having great games, 5 or 6 on the bounce, and then all of a sudden, there's a scout watching you. You have a poor game. That's the game they want to watch you in. It's not the ones that the blind man,
Mhm.
with all due respect, the blind man can see. It's the one that you have a bad game or a bad performance. It's how you react to that, how you respond to that. What are your emotions like? Can you control yourself when you're not playing at the best of your ability? I was always taught as a defender, always, you've got to have you can have one bad game out of 10, and that's the ratio. But that one bad game out of 10, if it's quickly followed by the next one bad game in 10, so you're having two
Yeah.
in 20, you may get left out, you may get dropped, you may get forgotten about. But you've got to make sure as a defender that your job is to stop the opposition from playing. And if you can achieve that by not playing not playing well, then you've got a half a chance of being a good defender and a quality defender. All of them things come into play. And I always remember saying this to Reece McNally. I think we played Kings Lynn away, and we didn't have one of our better performances last season. And I said it to Reece McNally, you might be thinking, who's watching? These are the games that they come to watch you for. They're waiting for you to trip up. They're waiting for the trip up moment for you to see how you respond, how you react. And if the scout is then at the next game and he sees you have a good game again, then it's a reason to sign you. So you've got the temperament. They know you've got the quality. They know you've got the ability to run. They know you've got all the physical attributes as a defender or whatever your position is. But it's that key moment where you're facing adversity, where you're coming up against somebody that you've got to actually think a little bit better or quicker than, and think about stopping him from playing in a different way. And if he comes back and watches you again, then you've got a chance of climbing the ladder. But scouting it's not a part-time job. It's more full-time than management, to tell you the truth. You're probably having to see a game a day for sure,
Yeah.
if not two. And I'm all for, okay, there's analysts about watching videos, etc., etc. I'm all for that. Don't get me wrong, because they can spot players that you haven't spotted because you haven't got the time to spot. But when you get told to go and watch these players, please, if the modern day game just goes on videos, forget about it. You have to be there to scratch and sniff. You have to be there to have a look, to see what the players like under pressure, to see what the club's like, to see what the style of football, to see what the game, the standard, all of them things come into play. So scouting for me is just vitally important. And yes, you've got to take your hats off to the club if you get it right. But at the same time, I think there's been almost like a flooded mentality at Kidderminster where something's gone wrong. Right, we'll put it right by bringing somebody else in. There must be a lot of players at Kidderminster Harriers that are sitting in the background, wasting their time
Yeah.
basically because you never seen them.
I
Uh,
think
I,
52
I,
is the amount of players we've gone through this season, I think is the number.
it's an awful lot of players, isn't it? I look at the players that are still there and the ones that are coming through and doing well for the football club, and you hold yourself, you're more or less looking at them and saying he can play higher for sure. Reece Devine being one of them, and now all of a sudden Reece Devine's finding himself in a hard place, being on the bench at Telford, being on the bench last night against Radcliffe. And he wants to play. He's the type of player that wants to play week in and week out. So sometimes that, where management's concerned, can be a difficult bag. But 52 players, a lot of players to go
Mm.
through. If you get promoted at the end of it, well played. But you can't just recycle players like that, because for me, that's not the way it works. If you get promoted and you have to recycle, that's a different argument. But if you're in the same division and you're recycling 52 players, it's a lot to concern yourself about. And as
Mm.
a manager, I many times I've done podcasts this year, and everybody asks me about Phil Parkinson at Wrexham. And I know for a fact, I know his backroom staff very well, and I know Phil very well. But they've been promoted 3 times in the last 3 years. Because of that, he has almost a wasteland behind him, a trail of players that he's left behind that are still at the football club.
Yeah.
So they moved to training grounds, new training grounds, and bigger facilities because they've got 2 changing rooms full of players. And it's difficult to manage that. It really is difficult to manage that. But hats off to Phil Parkinson for
Yeah.
still getting them promoted the following year. It's a process that you have to go through. That as a manager, you've got to deal with the wastage as well. You know, you've got to deal with the fact that you're going past players in the process of bringing new players in. But that's life. That's life in football.
Mm. So the season then we start with 3 wins in a row, Darlington, Radcliffe, Brackley. I think then we lose at Warrington, don't we? Which kind of brings us back down to earth. I remember your post-match interview with Steve Miller, and you were pretty angry, I think. And I remember thinking that you being as angry as you were then was kind of convincing me, with all due respect, that you were with us for the right reasons, if that makes sense. The anger that you were showing there was obviously very genuine. And then after that, I think we go on a 4-match winless run. We can't really find any form, and then Luke Summerfield breaks his leg, which
Mm.
is how big a blow is that?
Well, it was massive for the lad first and foremost, because he's such a wonderful person. You know, he's a great person. And when it happened uh, against Buxton, I think it was,
Yeah,
and it happened in circumstances that, as a manager that's played the game, been around the block a few times, I looked at the challenge and I wasn't happy with it. But unfortunately, at that level, you get referees that are refereeing a game at that level, and that's where they are. I'm not saying that's where they belong, but that's where they are. And you just want them to get their moments right. You know, the Joe Fawkes incident at Oxford City, you just want to get their moments right, because that is damaging a player's career. That is damaging somebody's life, for instance, as Luke Summerfield was concerned, because he was at a certain age where he's probably thinking, broke his leg, he's never going to come back from this. It's a retirement
yeah,
tackle, you know. So I didn't quite. It was a horrible night because we showed ourselves up as a football club for the medical service that we provided. We did everything we possibly could, but we then realised that insurance policies needed to be checked. The medical procedures behind the scenes needed to be checked and double checked. All of the things were taking the club to another level. Don't get me wrong, and we did, and we followed procedure to the best of our ability to whatever we could afford. Don't get me wrong again. But I remember travelling back from Kidderminster, going back home, and I called into the hospital, and Luke wasn't even in a bed. He wasn't even in a hospital bed. He hadn't been X-rayed. He was lying in a hospital van outside. You know, so it was NHS. Not blaming them. I'm just saying it was NHS procedures, and he had to wait in that hospital van for about 10 hours. It was horrendous. And at the same time, I knew Luke wouldn't have a bad word said about anybody. You know, he wouldn't have a bad
yeah,
word said about the kid who tackled him. But me looking at it from the outside, looking in, as in, you know, you're watching this challenge, and okay, you can go to the videos and this and the other. But yeah, immediate response is normally your first response. Your immediate response is the one that matters. And I thought it was a nasty challenge. Anyway, we never got. We didn't follow anything up. We didn't have to. You know, we just had to try and make sure that Luke was provided with the right kind of service and the right kind of support that we put in place, and then obviously the right kind of support for the players at the football club.
mm,
But again, do you need challenges like that for to do that, or do you need a board of directors with the level of support that are going to look into this procedure and go through it like as if you were in the Premier League? Because I know we can't afford Premier League policies, but you can certainly follow Premier League procedures,
mm,
and therefore, if you can't afford to do certain things, then you have to put that to the player before he steps across the white line representing you. And they're the things that rankle with me down at this level. But that's for another argument. If we go back to where we were at Kidderminster, we lost almost we lost almost our style of play when we lost Luke Summerfield. We lost that third man in midfield. You know, if I remember rightly, David Davis wanted to play in that position. Well, he had the opportunity then. But when Luke Summerfield was playing there, David Davis was on the touchline watching. And then he played alongside him sometimes, and Riley Reynolds. And, you know, if you look at Malik Carrigan, there was 3 or 4 that were just coming of age through the ranks, but they needed the likes of Luke Summerfield around them because he was driving the standard. He was driving the way we played. You had Alex Penny behind him. You had, we're talking about players who then were going. Reece McNally was just growing in stature because they could trust a pass to a midfield player who was willing to accept the ball in any situation because he had the next pass sorted. He was from a higher level of thinking, you know. And then consequently, because of that, Joe Fawkes and, you know, there's loads of players you can mention, but they were just growing in stature. The whole team was growing in stature down to Luke Summerfield. When it changed, we had to change our style of play. We had to go a little bit more robust. And it doesn't mean change a formation, but eventually we did. We went to a 3 at the back, and we had players that adapted to that quite well. But the front 3 were the important ones. You know, Maz Kuya, Amari Morgan-Smith, and Ashley Hemmings, because they were getting goals even when we were under the cosh. We were hitting teams on the counter and getting a goal, and a goal makes so much difference in a game of football at the highest level. At this level, it's one of them where your levels of confidence really get bashed if you concede a goal. But if you score a goal, everybody steps up to the plate, and we were doing that on a regular basis. Sometimes against the run of play, but it didn't matter to me that.
Yeah. If Luke stays fit, it doesn't go down to the final day, does it?
Probably. Probably yes. But again, if you look at if you identify the lad who did him, and I'm not talking about the individual who did him, it was probably a style of football that did Luke, where they've changed their system and played a man that is probably not a number 10, but more aggressive as a midfield player, more contact player, and more destroyer as opposed to a creator. You play number 10. When people say number 10, you look at a creator. But their number 10 that day was an extra man in midfield who was a destroyer. And consequently, he destroyed not Luke's career by any stretch of the imagination. You know, he's still in the game, and I think he's doing very well for himself. But on that moment, it changed our style of play and our plan of attack. And thankfully, we had players that could actually adapt to it.
Yeah. And then it took a little while, didn't it, for us to find some form after that. I've got written down that we took a point at Spennymoor, but then we lost to Guiseley in the FA Cup. Then we go on a great run, which takes us top. Brilliant at Hereford on Boxing Day. I think that's one of the fans' favourite games from last season.
Yeah.
And then arguably one of the worst results of the season was at home to Rushall on New Year's Day, which I think sort of pulled the rug from under everybody's feet.
That's I think that's the league. I think that's the way it is, the way it was. You know, when people, I can't understand some footballers. You know, when you cross that white line, you represent yourself to the best of your ability, regardless of who the opposition is. And yes, there's motivation for who you're playing against. Of course, you know, people raise their level of performance when you're playing against better sides, and the build up to every game it's Kidderminster Harriers. So we had to be able to deal with that. And then we go to Hereford, as you made reference to, and it was one of them days where you want to be involved in football when you go to Hereford away on a Boxing Day or a New Year's Day or one of them holiday venues, you know, that you go 7,500, 8,000 crowd, good turnout from our lads. Everybody's prepared properly for it. Start of the game, I tell you what, they weren't lying down. They were bang at it, you know. But I think it was Amari scored the first one, wasn't it?
I think Amari was it Zach? Did Zach get the opener?
Zach Brown, of course he did. Yeah, Amari scored the third one, I think, the top corner.
Yeah.
But when Zach scored, and Zach was in a rich vein of form, and I think a lot of credit needs to go down to Neil McDonald with regards to his individual handling of Zach Brown, because Macca recognised a midfield player, you know, and he recognised what Brownie was all about. And he, with Luke Summerfield, especially Luke Summerfield in the team, Brownie had a licence to go and get in that penalty box if he wanted to. But that's what Macca was coaching. And when he lost Luke Summerfield, David Davis was tending to be in that midfield berth, and Digger's more of an aggressive player and more of a ball winner, as it were, and he kept it simple by giving it to Brownie in an advanced position. And I think the people that he had round him, I think everybody really enjoyed the fact that Brownie was growing in stature and growing with the team and getting goals in vital games. And then none more so than the opening goal in what you would call a derby match, if you want to call it a derby match, but certainly a local rival. With a crowd that big, it was just a great day for everybody. I don't think I've seen as big a crowd as that at Hereford, but hats off to everybody that turned up that day, including the supporters that came across with us. And I remember walking on the pitch after the game, and not one of them had moved. I think it was about 700-800 there. That made their holiday period, as it were. And then, as you made reference to, Rushall back down to earth with a bump.
Yeah, I mean, you must have been tearing your hair out on the full time against Rushall.
Aye, very much so. Very much so. I don't know if you know the stats, but the stats were up there with regards to how much possession we had and, how many efforts on goal, etc., and then to be denied with the one that goes in the back of the net. Sometimes football is football, and that's why we love it. And that's what leaves you scratching your head some days, and it leaves you with a nice smile on your face other days. I had a nice smile on my face after Hereford, but after that game against Rushall, I didn't have a clue about football anymore. But it was interesting that it was going to prepare everybody, I suppose, for what was to come.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, because on the back of that sort of set the tone, I think, for another poor run. I've got written down, we only win 4 of the next 11. Joe Folks gets injured at Oxford. And then we have that defeat at home to Spennymoor, which I think was probably possibly one of the lowest points. I remember your post-match interview. You weren't lost for words, but you were pretty stinging in what you said about the players. I think you kind of basically muttered the words, I don't know if they want me sacked, kind of thing, and you were pretty adamant that everybody will be in the next day. So, how was that Sunday? What happened, and
Nick,
what was said?
I look at managers these days, and I don't care when anybody says it's a great job. And yes, we have to go through it. Of course you do. That's part and parcel of it. Don't get involved unless you are 100% committed to the job. And then if you're 100% committed to the club that you're with, that helps you. That helps you an awful lot. I've just watched a press conference with Mikel Arteta, who's going through a period where it'll be analysed. Everything he says, every word that comes out of his mouth will be analysed and psychoanalyzed, and that's what the job of the press is, the job of the media is, and everybody's making light of it, mockery of it. And there's not many people, not even the Arsenal supporters, are backing him with regards to, hold on a second, we're 6 points clear here. We're 6 points clear with 6 games to go. I mean, if you had handed me that at the start of the season, would I have took it? Of course you would. Doesn't matter what team you're with. And you've got the champions or the champions elect, whoever you've got the champions elect battle going on in the next match. Where, if you come away with a point, and you never go into a game thinking, well, I only need a point.
Yeah.
You go into a game thinking you can win this, and they can if they bring their A performance. But that's the problem that he's going through in his mindset, of the mentality of words coming out of his mouth that everybody's focusing on. Words that are meaningless until they come out of Mikel Arteta's mouth.
Yeah.
And everybody's making reference to them now. But if he goes into the City game with a draw mentality, he'll lose the game. If he goes into the City game thinking we can beat City on our A game day, and City bring their A game, then it'll be a great game of football. And then you take what the football gods bring you or give you. And that's probably sums up how I was feeling after the Spennymoor game. I know everyone says Spennymoor, Kidderminster Harriers, are you joking? You're talking about Arsenal and Man City. It does not matter who I'm talking about. It's references to what we are and who we are, and the real person comes out. Arnie Slot, talking about the defeat last night. I mean, they've been beaten over 2 legs, 4-0. It sounds like a thrashing. It sounds like an absolute drubbing, but he's made reference to so many things in the first half, which I was watching, and he's absolutely spot on. He's spot on, but it sometimes goes against you, and it can be a string of decisions that go against you, that the scorelines ends up 2-0, and you've been comprehensive, you've beaten over 2 legs, but I watched the way he conducted himself in the press conference. He's very calm, very, very assured of what he said, because he had just been in a heated encounter, and that's what we do. we go into a changing room straight after a game, then we go into a press conference, and is there method in the madness? I had my family in the hotel in Stourport Manor straight after the game, but all of them, my missus is going crazy with me, saying, I've got them in at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I've got to be here. I've got to be the first one there. End of story. And they had to suffer a wee bit by staying in a hotel overnight. That's not suffering. They had a lovely breakfast. I went to work, and when I came back and met them, I was a different person. Me missus, I was going to say my mother there. Me missus told me I was a different person, so I had to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
I had to get off my chest, and to be brutally honest, the players knew exactly what I was saying was bang on. It was on the money. Because if it wasn't, you'd lose the changing room. Because it has to be harsh. It has to be honest. It has to be brutal sometimes. But when you're talking to an Amari Morgan Smith and a David Davis and people of that ilk, you're going to get guys that are looking at you straight down into your soul, and you're looking at them straight down into their soul, and there ain't no lying space. There's no room for any kind of wriggle room so you can get out of it. You are where you want to be, and that is right in the thick of it in the argument. And from that moment, I think we massively turned a corner. I had to open up to the changing room with a lot of home truths, a lot of things that were going on in my life, in my communication, in my, the ability to, manage a football club that has been interfered with to a certain extent. And I had to open up where that was concerned. And if they don't back me, I'm done. But the players back me. The players back me 100%. And I think the only time we failed after that was the last day of the season.
You say interfered with, what do you mean?
I just mean, when you get, sometimes football can be smoke and mirrors. Sometimes it could be people who say things for whatever reason, and you've got to respond to that. You don't just react to it, you've got to respond to that, and how you respond to that is by making sure you're on the training ground, in front of the players and doing your work, and getting your views across, and getting your opinions across, and getting your coaching across, and making sure that they understand this is what we need to do. If you remember the crazy halftime team talk, which I'm renowned for,
I wonder what you're going to talk about. Yeah,
at Manchester City. If you remember that, and then you walk into a change room and you've exposed the whole change room, you walk into that change room again, you'll know full well who's still with you.
Yeah.
And that change room was still with me. And the following game told me that change room was still with me. We were 0-0 against Aston Villa, and we had a horrendous VAR decision. VAR hadn't even been whispered or muted about, and this was like 10 years beforehand, and all of a sudden we had a VAR decision that went against us, and we had a penalty that was given to us, and then it was taken away. And there wasn't such a thing as VAR. I'll tell you the full story one day, Nick, but that was against Aston Villa. 92nd minute, I think they went up the other end of the field and got a 1-0 victory, and everybody said, have you lost the change room?
Yeah.
Dear me. But that changing room that I had at Kidderminster, I must admit, that you've brought me round to saying that was probably one of the strongest changing rooms I've had. Not one of the best in terms of football, but one of the strongest changing rooms I had. And what I mean by strength, I mean strength of character, but I mean by strength of the resilience of bouncing back from what I'm accusing you of. We're going to show you we're not what you're saying. We are strong. We are genuine. We are honest. And I thought they were a really, really strong, honest group, and that was proven to me.
Yeah, and then you make arguably two of the most significant signings for the rest of that season. Dave Worrell, Kyle Morrison, two players that the fans still wax lyrical about today. I mean, were they your additions, or were they someone who were put to you?
Dave
I think yeah.
Dave was. I'd had. You still with me, Nick?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
I've just got a call coming through, but I'll take it after.
Okay.
Dave Worrell was a player that I'd come up against on numerous occasions, and he was a thorn in your side. He was just an absolute winger that was a pain. As a fullback or an ex-fullback, looking at Dave, he was one of them players. You just get a half a yard, put it in. You didn't even have time to shift your feet. You just got that. You recognised when to cross the ball, and when he became available, it was a no-brainer to me. It was just a case of age and travel and what he had going for himself regarding the personal side of life. And sometimes you have to take them things into consideration and cut him some slack. The beauty of Dave was he was coming from the northwest of the Manchester region, and you had in his car you had Christian Dibble and Amari Morgan Smith, to name but two, and that was enough. I thought they will get into him. They will make sure that he's thinking the right things, he's saying the right things, and he's doing the right things, because Dave, if you cut him some slack, he give him an inch, he'll take a mile sometimes. But what a player to be bringing in the experience of that player at that stage of the season was going to be priceless. Kyle Morrison, different kettle of fish. Where I was concerned, Charlie Tonks had worked with him before. Players knew him in the changing room. As soon as Amari Morgan Smith said, absolute no-brainer, if he wants to come, he's been here before. I hated playing against him. I hated training against him. I said, that'll do for me. I didn't need any more reference. And Kyle Morrison, they were arguably, as you say, the kind of character that you wanted to bring into the change room at that moment where you needed character, the word character. And they slotted in very, very nicely into a system that was going in the right direction.
Yeah, and they combined, didn't they, for that opening goal against Kings Lynn in the end? That was a 2-0 win. I was doing commentary that day for National League TV, and I remember what you were wearing bizarrely that day. You were a tracksuit manager that night, and I remember afterwards I thought I sort of shouted down to you as you'd done your post-match interview, saying, "Oh, you've got to remain a tracksuit manager now, Phil." And I'm not taking any credit for it at all, but you did. I mean, was that a conscious decision?
No, 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 not really. Sometimes it just depends on me preparation. Sometimes preparation for a game of football is never done until that final moment. And when you go into a warm up situation on the field of play, it could be, I maybe need to step in here. I maybe need to do a bit of, and I don't. I think you've got to dress for the occasion. Doesn't matter what you are and what you do. And if you want to be that manager that makes decisions and lets the coaches get on with it, I've always been a coach on the field of play, but I also like wearing clothes. I don't like wearing tracksuits. I think tracksuits are for work on the training ground, and that's about it. But I managed to keep it on that day. Sometimes it's to do with the changing room facilities. Sometimes it's to do with the showering facilities. As you know, at that level,
Yeah.
it's not always glamorous. But no, it wasn't a conscious decision. But you were right in spotting it, and maybe it became a little bit superstitious after that. I don't know.
I mean, and that was the win that sort of started that brilliant run, wasn't it? 11 wins in 13, I think, two draws in that 13 match run as well. Brilliant football. We beat Brackley away, we beat Scunthorpe at home, an important win against Rushall as well. And then arguably, it's the result that fans talk about, the 5-1 win at home to Hereford. I mean, bumper Agbra crowd, brilliant
Yeah.
goals, brilliant atmosphere. How enjoyable a day was that for you?
Funny, I was thinking similar thoughts when I was coming home last night. I came home from training last night, and I was looking at your result at Radcliffe, and then all of a sudden, my results system went a little bit funny.
Yeah, I think a lot
Match
of people's did.
match
Yeah.
was abandoned, and
Yeah.
at 3-1, and I'm thinking, what happens there? How many minutes have gone?
Mm.
Will the results stand? And next thing you know, it goes to 7:45 kickoff. Next thing you know, it goes to 4-2. And I'm going, what the hell's going on here? So I had to try and dig a little bit. But at the same time, I was looking at Bolton's score. Teams that I've managed, played for, still have a feeling for. Um, Known full well that Bolton are going into a playoff situation. Hull City looking likely they're going into a playoff situation. Barrow played last night, 1-0 down. 1-0 up, 2-0, 2-1 down, and won the game 3-2. It was just an amazing night for teams that I've been
Mm.
with and managed before. But I was coming back thinking that that same result, 5-1. It's a marker that you're putting down just at the right time. And I thought Bolton Wanderers were doing
Yeah.
that last night, when they played Stevenage last night. And I was thinking similar kinds of thoughts when we beat Hereford 5. It was a great performance. It was one of them where we'd done the business at their place on Boxing Day, and it was coming to the business end of the season. And it was about getting over the line. I wasn't thinking about playoffs. I was thinking about getting over the line. Having beaten Scunthorpe 1-0, as you made reference to, having beaten Brackley 1-0, they were massive 6-pointers. Hereford, again, taking 6 points off them in 2 fixtures. They were all movements in the right direction, steps in the right direction, and plans that were coming together, and putting people in good moods, in good mindset with regards to the business end of the season, which was always going to be the last 2 games, last 1 game, depending on how the league played its hand. And as you say, the rest is history. But we put enough markers down. The reverse psychology of the marker, if you go to Leamington 1-1 draw, in amongst that 13-14 game run, the Leamington 1-1 draw was the moment where I thought, is it going to happen? And I really doubted myself, because I was thinking we did enough in the first half. Ashley Hemmings had two or three great chances. He had an opportunity where, if I remember rightly, I can picture it, the right hand side of the goal where he picked himself up from a foul. I thought he was going to stay down for a penalty. Picked himself up, weaved his way in, and all he had to do was lay a square past the Amari Morgan Smith for a tap into an empty net, and he pulled his shot wide. But you couldn't blame Ashley Hemmings, 30 odd goals. You couldn't blame him for that. But you remember the moments, I think, was it David Davies hit the crossbar, or just scraped the crossbar in the second half? And that was at 1-1, and I'm thinking, is it going to happen? Could I fault the players for a draw at Leamington? You can't really when you're in such a rich vein of form. All of them wins, things have gone against us in them wins, and we still managed to get the win, But that's football. I keep on saying it to myself. It's football at every level. That's football at its finest, and you have to deal with the rough and the smooth.
We'll talk Southport in just a moment. I just wanted to talk about the contribution of Ashley Hemmings that season. I remember talking to you ahead of it, and you were sort of waxing lyrical about how fit Ashley Hemmings was, his commitment, and that sort of thing. And he delivered in buckets.
He sent a message to everybody, for me on the first day of training, and it has to be said, the pre-season that we did. I've now gone to Peterborough Sports, and Peterborough Sports were training 2, sometimes 3 times a week for pre-season. That's not a pre-season. We were 6 weeks solid on the training ground every day. They got the odd day off, whether it was coming to a heavy period of matches towards the end and towards the start of the season. You get the odd day off then, but it was proper commitment. But he turned up the first day, 3.5% body fat. He was ready for action. And I was thinking to myself, my biggest worry as a manager was then, is he ahead of the game? Is he ahead of training? Because everybody's going to be playing catch up. But he didn't. He stayed ahead of it. He stayed ahead of the players, and he was first on the team. I had said this to him on the very first day. I didn't say it to the rest of the players, because of what you just turned up and did. You are first on you're on the team sheet. You're the first one on. And this was 6 weeks before I actually made the first team selection. But then he kept on setting a standard, and he kept on staying in front in the running. He kept on being different in training sessions and doing things and sharper than everybody else, and just dragging everybody up by their bootlaces, And they were coming. He was leading by example. He was very, very close to being the captain, very close to being captain, but he wasn't a great talker. And that's not being disrespectful of him. 1-to-1, you can have a conversation, no problem. But being able to speak in front of a group of players is a tough gig, And Amari wasn't perfect at it. I mean, there was other players that were better orators, if you like, better speakers in public. But you pick it because of the character. You pick it because of what they've done in pre-season. You pick it because of experience sometimes, various things, best player, whatever position. It's very rare that I've ever picked a number 9 to be my captain. And I was going to I was going to go with the goalkeeper as well. There was loads of reasons
Yeah.
why they were getting the captaincy, but because of Ashley Hemmond's very first day in pre-season, he was close to being a captain.
And so we have the week then to build up to Southport. Away at Southport, nothing to play for. Fans getting very excited. I think pretty much everybody had sort of almost handed us the title to a degree. I mean, what are you looking for in the build up to that game? It's the biggest game in the club's history for quite some time. What as the manager, what are you looking for in that week?
I'm looking for a difference, to counter it, because at the end of the day, we'd had three, as you've made reference, 12, 13, 14 wins, whatever it was. Coming into that, somewhere down the line, we're going to slip up. We're not going to perform to the levels that we have been performing because we're human beings, and pressure kicks in. There's all sorts of things. So I'm looking for as Sam Allardyce used to teach me, when you go on the training ground, you're looking for little things that are different. And anything could be the slightest of change of somebody's voice, in their response to a question. It could be anything, just little bits of difference. Somebody gets a haircut for the last day of the season. You expect that probably to a certain extent. Somebody gets a haircut for the pre-season, photo shoot. Of course, everybody's going to look their best and try and look their best. But somebody gets a haircut for the last game of the season. Is that a telltale sign, or is that somebody just trying to prepare themselves in the mirror and just saying, "I'm ready for this. I want to look sharp. I want to look good because I want to play. I want to play sharp. I want to play good." All the little things, but it is a psychological thing that you're looking for, and that I honestly think that I built it up, probably a little bit too much. So I hold myself responsible for that, because I had players that had represented us all the way through the season. I had everybody there at the hotel, so everybody turned up. The ones who, so say for instance, if they were doing it again, they would be trying. I would try and get 52 players there
Yeah.
because everybody has contributed to this moment. Now, that was for after the game, not before the game.
Yeah.
And that was the fault of mine. That was the mistake I made. But at the same time, I did player appraisals after that, and I had 5 or 6 players that said to me, honestly, hand on heart, they really felt the pressure more than ever and couldn't really deal with it, couldn't really handle it. And that's them being brutally honest after a game. Now, the only way to get past that is to stick with it. I'm talking about me, my relationship with a player, etc., etc. Trusting that the next time it comes around, they will be able to handle it. I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah.
Come the end of the season with regards to Kiddy Harriers' fate this year, and I really mean that. I know I was full of hell when I was playing against you. Certainly as a manager of Peterborough Sports in one of my first league games. In fact, it was the first league game, and I wanted to beat you desperately. I wanted to beat you, but that's the way I am. I'm a fighter where that's concerned. But my support is definitely with you now, and I'm hoping that whatever the Reece Devines, the Riley Reynolds, the Amari Morgan Smiths, the players that Cam Candle has that are still at the football club, David Davies, of which I watched at Telford. I thought he was outstanding at Telford, and I think he looks like he's got the bit between his teeth.
Yeah.
The players that are still there, hopefully they'll be able to handle that situation again, and fingers crossed, get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, I was obviously at Southport, and I think probably even 10 minutes in, I was just thinking there were worrying signs there, weren't there? I was just thinking we're not at it today. Are you
Yeah,
thinking the same on the bench?
not a case of not at it. It was just a case of players like Reece Devine and Dave Worrell. By the time 10 minutes, 15 minutes had come, I'd have a couple of examples of crosses coming in.
Yeah.
We would be heavily laden, to try and get the advantage, to try and put them on the back foot by getting the ball out wide and get an early crossing, just to see what it's like. Go and put it in their penalty box, cause a little bit of consternation, cause a little bit of chaos. But they couldn't even cross the ball, and both of them I would class as probably near as damn it the best crossers that I've worked with. And I've been at the highest level. The best crossers that I've worked with, Reece Devine, and I still see it. Now he puts an unbelievable cross in. If you're a striker, you think get between the sticks, something's coming in, and it's got bend on it, it's got whip on it, it's got pace, and it's normally between the goal the goalkeeper and the back three, four,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But we couldn't we couldn't cross the road that day. It was horrendous, and I was thinking not them just them two players. I was thinking we don't look like we are at it to the same level. So couldn't wait to get in at half time to try and calm them down, not try and get after them. Try, because your last day of the season, playing for a title or trying to win a title, it's not a time to get uptight. It's not a time
Yeah.
to be shouting, bawling. They've done all the hard work, and I've done all the shouting and bawling that we need to. We've reached this moment together. So it was about a calm delivery at half time and come out the second half, and hopefully they're where they are because of that's the players, and that's where they are in the division. The league table doesn't lie, and we are where we are because the league table doesn't lie. You're the best team in the division. Let's go and prove it in the second half, but we still didn't. And regretful moments in your career. I've been around the block a
Mm.
few times with regards to playing, coaching, and managing with regards big games. And this was a big game. Doesn't matter who you're managing. This was a big game, and we
Mm.
just didn't turn up.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, in terms of obviously the managerial career that you've had and all the highs that we know about, to miss out on the final day like that, where does that sort of sit amongst the disappointments?
Biggest low, big time. The biggest low. You can get relegated. That's the season. That's a sign that you've inherited maybe a team, which I did do at Preston, and I couldn't put the anchors on quick enough. With about 16 games to go, 10 points adrift of the league table, and then 5 players down on the very first day. I take the job. Is there time? 16 games to go, absolutely. And you do turn a corner, and we didn't get relegated until the last game at home, which you wonder, can you do anything more? Can you squeeze any more out of a group of players? We had been squeezing the players, there's no doubt about it. We had been preparing them absolutely properly, and with regards to the opposition, we didn't underestimate the opposition just because they were, in the lower reaches of the division. We knew they had players that could win a game of football. Phyllis Kirk being one of them, who scored a goal that day, maybe scored two. We knew they had their strengths, and we had to nullify them, which we always worked on. But we knew we had our strengths, and the goals that they had conceded suggested that they couldn't nullify our strengths, but we nullified our strengths by not turning up.
Yeah.
But it ranks up there with if there's such a highest low, big time, because you feel as if you've failed everybody. You feel as if you've let everybody down, and then that's compounded by a game against Chester.
Yeah, and very often when sides miss out on a title on the final day, they fall in the playoffs, don't they? Did you have a big fear about that?
Not a fear of falling in the playoffs, because that's an achievement in itself. There's only one team, which is crazy, by the way. We can
Yeah.
talk about that another time. But one team gets promoted, and then 6 teams get in the playoffs. So there's a lot of teams got a high percentage of getting in playoffs. And then bottom four goes down. So 11 teams are involved in something come the end of the season. But one team to go up, I didn't quite get that. And hopefully it will change in the course of the next couple of years. But you then have to focus your attention on cup finals and cup ties. And I think I always thought that the semi-finalists have always got an advantage. It's crazy, isn't it? You're second top or your third top or wherever you finish, and then the
Yeah.
teams fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh have got a game extra to prepare. And I'm thinking that's an advantage, in my opinion. That's an
Yeah.
advantage. But hey ho, we can't argue about that one. I think Chester, when we scored the first goal, I thought this might be okay today, because we've got one nose in from when they equalised, and then the second half it looked like there was only one winner. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what we did, doesn't matter what changes we made. They were on the up, and they got over the line. So
Yeah.
hats off to them.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your post-match interview about Shane Byrne being there.
Yeah,
I think you quite pointedly, I think, sort of said we've got a promotion-winning captain watching us. Was that kind of a reference to not being able to keep him at the club? Is that a big regret?
It wasn't a big regret because it was a
Oh, I've lost your sound,
knocked
Phil.
about. Anyway, I
Oh,
can answer
there
that
you are. You're
one
back.
now. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry.
I'm not making reference about losing Shane apart from any other reason. Finances were the only reason, and it wasn't. Was I outvoted or anything like that? Was it somebody else's opinion? No, my opinion was to keep Shane at the football club, but I couldn't afford his wages, and whether the club can afford them now or whether Shane would consider dropping wages or whatever, it doesn't matter now. At the end of the day, I just couldn't afford him, and when he departed on a sour note. To be fair to anybody, he departed by saying something that he was disappointed with us that we couldn't almost match his ambition. So when we beat them at their place, I'm not saying for 1 minute we thought we'd won the title then, but when we beat them at their place, it was almost like, go on and Shane, what you got to say now? It would be nice to have done an interview with them then, because I think that was a real telltale sign. The 1-0 win against Scunthorpe and then the 1-0 at Brackley, they were real telltale signs that we were in the right headspace,
Yeah.
that we had the bit between our teeth, that we were heading for the number one spot. We weren't settling for playoffs, and big teams, you're talking about Brackley have been up there many, many times and been promoted many, many times. And Shane being part of that promotion at Brackley as well. And Scunthorpe as well being a league team. They were pointing us in the right direction. The way I was thinking as a manager, I wasn't taking it for granted by any stretch of imagination, but there were indicators that we were going in the right direction.
Mm.
And then when, I don't know, Shane got promoted automatically, which was quite a rare way of doing it on the last day. Any one of 4 or 5 could have been promoted. It was
Mm.
crazy, but it was brilliant for the division. It was brilliant for the National League. It was brilliant for everybody's sponsors, this, that, and the other. But we had our job to do. We had to. Work went on. But Shane was more or less. It was almost like a side swipe at us. I've got promoted. It was almost smarmy to a certain extent. And don't get me wrong, he might have his heart in the right place. He might have came to support Kiddy Harriers, and I take my hat off to him. I don't think I could have done that. Having just been promoted, it was almost I'm
It
gloating a
rankles.
wee. I'm gloating a wee bit here.
Yeah.
We're already there. What can you do now?
Yeah.
But hey ho, that's just an aside.
Yeah, and then 3 days later, you're gone, which it's. I mean, that caught a lot of fans out. I think. I know you spoke afterwards about you. I think you were asked about recruitment for the next season and whether you had the fight. So you were talking as if you were going to be there the following season, and then 3 days later, we get the statement saying both you and Neil are on your way.
It was just one of them moments that I had a feeling when I was managing the way I was managing the club in the last 14, 15 games. I was managing the club in a different way, and what I mean by that is I almost closed the doors to the changing room. The doors were always open to everybody. Anybody could walk in, didn't matter who it was. Sponsors, owners, directors of football, substitutes, players who weren't playing. The changing room was always open, but I actually closed the door because I wanted to focus the players' attention on the job in hand, and that hurt one or two people. They didn't understand it. That doesn't matter to me, whether they understand it or not. If I'm getting the result, if we're getting the result, then it's the right way to do it. So when I closed the door, literally metaphorically closed the door to the change room, it was high risk management, and therefore I knew it would come back to bite me or haunt me if I was unsuccessful. Would you class, I don't know, 13 or 12 wins out of 14, 2 draws, and then 1 defeat? Would you class that as it was one of the best runs in the club's history? So I just don't get it when it's working, but I also get it when it goes against you.
Yeah.
That it could be terminal, and but high risk management is part of life, and you get on with it, and if it works, well done, you go to the top. If it doesn't work, you find yourself out of work.
Yeah. So had that impacted your relationship with Richard and Dean then, that decision to sort of close off the dressing room? Because I remember being at the Chester game and there's sort of a few whispers saying, well, if we don't get the job done, then you could be on your way.
Um, did it affect my relationship? I
Or was it not that good in the first place anyway?
I I quite questions like that I find quite difficult to answer because I'm the subservient here. I'm the manager.
Yeah.
You've got the director of football and you've got the chairman. So I'm answering to them basically. If a question comes, I'll answer it. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it where that's concerned. Open conversation, rounds of golf, anything like that. Um, they had stopped because it was the business end of the season. I understand that as well. So was the relationship hampered by a promotion run? I think it was to a certain extent, but it was because I was doing my work. It was as simple as it gets. I was concentrating and focusing purely and solely on performance. And as I say, you go through one of the richest in terms of return of points. You go through one of the richest periods of your career, personally as a manager, but also as from the football club's perspective. There must be something right. But they found, obviously, 3 days after the season had finished, they found that it wasn't as right as I thought it would.
Mm. And it must have stung. I remember you being on Fighting Talk over the summer, and there was a pointed answer, wasn't there, about those two?
Listen, it's life. As far as I'm concerned, I've been relieved of my duties on a number of occasions. When I first came into football as a manager, I was at Derby County, and I was blasé enough, but also strong-willed to say that I'm not in the game of management to be sacked. Um, I'm in the game of management to stay in the job and move on if necessary to bigger and better things. But I believed in myself, and I had an unbelievable apprenticeship under Sam Allardyce at Bolton Wanderers. It was just fantastic. But he always marked me card, Brownie. If you're going to become a manager, understand that you're going to get the sack one day. And I was blanking it out. I was totally oblivious to it. Nine months into the Derby tenure, I had been relieved of my duties, and I had every reason why I had been relieved of my duties, but none of them counted for anything because you've
Yeah.
been sacked. That's the headline. The headline, the one word people focus on these days is sacked, and you've only got yourself to blame. I understand that.
Mm.
I understand that now. Full stop.
Yeah. And then obviously you're out the game for a little while. The Peterborough Sports opportunity comes up, and as you've alluded to, kind of your first home game was against us, wasn't it? And I don't think I think every Harriers fan that I'd spoken to knew exactly what the result was going to be when we went to when we went to Peterborough. I mean, how much did that mean to you? Sort of, I don't know. Would you use the phrase "getting one over," Kiddy, at that point?
Uh, it's strange, because the game of football. Say, for instance, if you take it to the highest level and you go to the Premier League, you haven't got any communication with supporters unless you go to supporters' nights, and you can have somebody hurling abuse at you from the touchline. But when 20,000 is hurling abuse at you, it becomes a
Yeah.
blur. When you get one just standing beside you, which is like 2 feet away, and they're near your dugout, you're having conversations with people, and that's the difference between Premier League and non-league. When the Kiddy fans turned up, I've got to say it, they were absolutely to a man, to a woman, to a child. They were outstanding with some of their comments that were very supportive of me and what we did. And I can't say what we achieved because we didn't achieve
Yeah.
anything. But what we did, but the word achieve is the word that you use in a boardroom. What we did is the word that you use on the terraces. Um, One of the memorable runs, if you like, that gets us to the playoff stage. But the board would be looking at it, not the memorable run. They'd be looking at the feeling of the last day of the season against Southport and then getting beat off Chester. So that's the difference between boards and supporters. And I can't put any. That's not being aggressive. That's not being negative. That's just the way it is. You've got a train of thought in the boardroom. You've got a train of thought on the terraces. I'm a terrace supporter. I've supported Sunderland all my life, and I started supporting Sunderland when I was a young lad. So I understand the terrace mentality, and they want to be entertained, they want to see good football, and they want to win.
Mm.
Um, so do the board. They don't necessarily want to be entertained.
Yeah.
They want to win. They want to win. That's all they want to do. And if it doesn't work out because you're not playing the right style of football, or it doesn't work out because you don't actually get promoted by playing good football, then you're the one that's to blame, and that's the deal. But the supporters, to a man, woman, and child, were very, very. They inspired me, and they didn't just inspire me to win that day, because at the end of the game they were applauding me,
Yeah.
and that's nice. That's really nice. But for us to win that game and then to be relegated, I can't accept. But that's the reason why I'll
Yeah.
probably lose my job at Peterborough Sports. But that's the reason why I'm still involved in football. I'm passionate about management. I'm a passionate guy, full stop. And I want to have success where I am. I stepped to one side about 2 months back to become a director of football, to see what it's like, just to sample life as a person who's responsible for piecing the jigsaw together, but not actually responsible for tactics or managing the team. But you're responsible for giving the manager the tools of his trade. And one fails, we all fail. I feel as if I failed because I became a director of football, and it's the other manager that's took them down. No, that's not the way I'm thinking at all. I feel as if the whole club's failed. Um, but to beat Kidderminster on the first league game 2-1, to show that passion, that running desire, that ability to play football against a team that can stop you from playing, and to beat a team that's on the up. And we did it against Hornchurch the game before. They were top of the Southern League. So we showed in 2 games that we can win games of football. To be relegated, I just don't accept that level of
Mm.
inconsistency. And if I had been at the football club longer beforehand, I maybe would have had a better group of players that had the same mentality as me. But
Mm.
that wasn't the case.
And how was your return to Agborough?
Um,
Apart from the
it,
results, obviously.
it was in the middle of the Cheltenham Festival, and it was on a Tuesday night. And I always go to Cheltenham, and I was going to Cheltenham the following day. I had it booked up. Um, but I said to the chairman, we were playing Alfredton on the Saturday. I said to the chairman, your decision. I either come to the Kidderminster game with you and I'll support you in the boardroom, which I'm quite willing to do, or I go to see Alfredton play on Tuesday night in preparation for us playing on Saturday. And he said, I want you at the Kidderminster game. That's the reason why I was there. I thought it was it had an adverse effect. I know the likes of Amari would have looked at me in that box, director's box, and the players that I had at Kidderminster when I was there. I know they would have been looking at me saying, we owe you one for the 2-1 defeat at your place. And that didn't just give them inspiration. I think you were a better team from minute one. The new manager was in place, being a former Kidderminster player himself. So he had his own battles out there.
Yeah.
He at least could cross the white line and do them battles on the field of play. I'm sitting in a boardroom. I don't class words as being battle proof. I think you've got to cross the white line and be out there as a supporter and get into your team and be passionate and this, that, and the other. That's football for me, not the boardroom. So it wasn't a nice return. The result was horrendous. The game for me was horrible to watch because we were losing. It was brilliant from Kidderminster's point of view. And I dare say some of the handshakes afterwards were through gritted teeth, and one or two were, well, whatever. I'll not even go there.
No, well, I was just literally interested from a personal point of view, really. Were people fans, I suppose, as well? Were they good to you?
The fans were great. The fans were, I mean, Richard was great as well. You know, he shook my hand before and after the game. I don't know if he was at the Peterborough Sports game. I didn't see Richard that day, but I, felt like you have to be there. You know, I have to
Yeah.
represent the football club. I have to support my chairman now. I have to support the players. And yeah, I went in the boardroom, had a meal beforehand, and after the game, I went in the boardroom, shook his hand, and said, "Well done. Hopefully he'll get promoted."
Mm.
And that will not change. Hopefully, we'll get promoted.
And what about you and management? Are you kind of done, or does it depend what offers perhaps coming your way?
I'm looking at football in a different way. I really am. I'm looking at part-time football is not for me. 100% doesn't matter what I'm doing. Whether and what I mean by that is doesn't matter whether I'm chair, director of football, director, manager, coach, whatever. Part-time mentality does not work. Um, and I know you can argue against that by saying, well, hold on a second, somebody's got to win the league, and if it's a part-time league, somebody's got to win that league. Probably the best players will win that league. But part-time mentality, well, it doesn't work. If you look at the top six, seven in our division, they're all full-time. There is one that's struggling at the bottom. I think it's Kings Lynn. They're full-time and they're having a battle against relegation. So there's something about part-time that just doesn't work to me. Full-time work during the day and you play football part-time means that this is more important than that.
Yeah.
It can't be. Football's more important than anything in my head. So when I ask a player to represent me, I want that feeling. I want that in
Mm.
return. So if he gives me that in return, then he's in my team. Simple as
Mm.
simple as that.
We'll finish with some quick fire questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
All Harriers based. So, best player in your squad that you had with us?
Oh, best player. It has to be said Ashley Hemmings.
Yeah. Um,
But my argument would be Riley Reynolds because I think Riley's got a career ahead of him. Ashley's got had the career behind him, but he's still doing it. So at that time in Harriers squad, Ashley Hemmings.
Favorite player. So favorite player isn't necessarily always the best player.
Uh, Reese McNally.
Okay. I was expecting Zach to be mentioned there. So what? Why Reese?
No, Zach would have been Maccas.
Yeah.
Uh, Reese McNally. I just like the lad as a temperamental soul. He looks like he's torn half the time, but when he brings his A game to the table, I think he should be playing Championship, First Division football minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum. He's got the attributes to do that, but he's probably just a lovely lad, and I wish I could get a little bit of me in him. Because there's a lovely lad inside me, but there's also a fighter, and that's not to say. It's one thing. Reese McNally came off the field of play one day, and the club do their best to try and keep the family safe. But his something had been said to his girlfriend, and he went straight into the Harriers bar to sort it out. And I thought, if he had that mentality on the pitch, he might get more red cards. Who knows? But if he had that mentality on the pitch, he would be a lot more proactive with regards to leadership. And I think if he became that leader, he would play at a far higher level.
If you had to sign three players from that squad, who would you choose?
Uh, Riley Reynolds, Christian Dibble, and Cam Candler.
Yeah, we love Cam. He's had a stop-start season this season for various reasons, injury, and obviously struggling to get into to get into that midfield.
Reece Devine as well would be
Yeah,
one of them. So if I was doing three outfield players, it would be Reece Devine. But I think Christian Dibble's been a great servant to the
yeah,
football club, and everybody needs a good goalkeeper.
yeah. I thought Caleb might edge in there as well. Caleb's Mr. 8 out of
Caleb,
10, isn't he?
Caleb's brilliant. Caleb was one of them players that was everyone says 7.5 out of 10, but they go to 7.5 with Caleb. Everybody wants a player 7 out of 10 every week, 7 out of 10 every week. But Caleb's special. Caleb's 7.5 every week. He could even be 8 every week. But if he was 8 every week, he'd be playing for Leeds United.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Reese potentially playing higher. What are your thoughts on Maz making his football league move?
Maz Kuya.
Yeah,
I think Maz's biggest problem is believing in himself.
yeah.
He has got so much ability, and he has had samples at league level. Um, I just think in a team that's playing well, in a team that gets him the ball, he'll be a threat against anybody. And it was great to have them three up top, by the way, because one, fitness levels were brilliant of every one of them. Amari
Mm.
Morgan Smith, regardless of age, he would lead the lane, and the moment he got he got Polak's, was it a Radcliffe game, 4 games in? He got Polak's and he had that 21-day concussion protocol. The other 2 players became different players. They were thinking they had to do something different. They had to
Yeah.
do something better because Amari wasn't there. But when we had them 3, they were on such a different wavelength. Just getting into pockets of space when the opposition had the ball. When the opposition had the ball, they found a way of defending, but also getting into pockets of space. As soon as you put the ball into the turn and just nobody could live with them. But Maz was great for me, fantastic for me, because it was a constant battle on and off the field of play. He didn't know whether he was going to go to a higher club, whether he could go to a higher club, or whether he was just, serving his time as an on-loan player,
Yeah.
Difficult. It really is difficult with Matt.
I've got biggest regrets written down here, which I suppose is going to be the obvious.
Yes. Not getting... It could be not picking the team, not picking the right team for the Southport game. And it's difficult not to not pick the right team, because at the end of the day, you had so many telltale signs in the last 14 games. The run-in was such a brilliant run-in that the team should be picking itself. But I suppose you've got to regret looking at players. Say, for instance, you didn't pick 2 or 3 players on the last day of the season because you thought they were suffering from nerves. How can you put that out?
Yeah.
How can you judge a player on that before he's crossed the white line, when you've not been to that moment with that player before? But I think I picked the right team. I just think we just froze on the day, and I have to include myself in that. You probably have to say the manager must have frozen, but no, I think we just ran out of ideas, and consequently we got beat. I can't even say beat by a better team. Normally I do say beaten by a better team, but we weren't beaten by a better team. We were beaten by ourselves.
How much did you enjoy it? It's because you managed at so many different levels, and as we said at the top, this is the first time you managed at that level. But from an enjoyment sort of standpoint, what was it like?
Really enjoyed it. Really did. Normally the clubs that I've enjoyed the most, that I've had the most time there. I had 5 years at Hull. I've had 14 years at Bolton Wanderers, but 7 as a coach and 7 as a player. I then had 5 years at Southend. So they're only times where I've enjoyed it the most, because it doesn't become routine. You have to keep it fresh. You have to keep changing and changing yourself and evolving. I've been to clubs where I've been there. I've enjoyed my time there. Preston North End, I've enjoyed my time there, but it's just been such an uphill battle at winning games of football and winning fans over, because you haven't actually won them over by the moment that you get the sack.
Yeah.
It's more than what you deserve. So you have 18 months there, and you haven't really bedded yourself in. Even 18 months is not long enough. But you're getting your ideas across. But 5 years is a sign that you're in, you're done, your DNA's in the team, and everything's enjoyable about the job. Then you've actually cracked it where the job's concerned, because enjoying management is the hardest part of the game. But I really enjoyed it from minute one at Kidderminster. I enjoyed the travel across. An hour and a half's just about right for me. Thinking time, management time, office time, having the car and obviously the phone. And by the time you get to the training ground, a great facility at that level, it's just phenomenal. Everyone was quite envious of what we had. But the plan going forward, the education system, all of them things, I really enjoyed my time. Really enjoyed it, but regretted the fact that it ended so early, abruptly.
Yeah. If we had have gone up, how do you think we would have fared? It's very hypothetical, I know.
It has to be a hypothetical question, because you're looking at that league, and I have looked at that league, and there's some really good teams in that league that have had massive league experience, and everybody in them says we want to get back to. And I know Kiddy's had an opportunity where they've been there a couple of seasons, and they want to get back to that. But some of them had hundreds of years, hundreds
Yeah.
of years there, Yorks and the Carlisles and people, even Southend, Rochdale's. They've had many years there, and they want to get back to that. I bumped into a former manager, Dutch international, Dutch and Danish international, who you'll know very well.
Yes.
I bumped into him at at a Spurs Man City game. He was doing a bit of work for Danish TV. And when I spoke to him, I thought I'll get a good idea about what he thinks of the football club. Loves it,
Oh yeah,
loves the football club, loves his time there. Speaks
he
very fondly
yeah
of it. It's such it gets under your skin. Certain clubs do, and Kidderminster Harriers were one of them. It got under my skin as well. So that's not just the people that work there; it's just everything about it.
yeah.
It's set up to be a league club and deserves to get there when it does.
Just finally, then, Phil, what would your message be to the fans? Because given the way your departure was, there wasn't really any sort of opportunity for you to say anything, really.
No, I've got nothing but good memories of a very well run and a very well supported club that's loved by lots of people. Lots of people, and outside the football club speak so affectionately, so passionately about Kidderminster Harriers. So I've had a little sample of that, and I never regretted one moment of it. I really enjoyed my time there, and I hope you get the job done this year. And I'll continue to support you as I do with all the clubs that I've been involved with. I'll continue to support you, watch your games with interest when I get a chance to, and watch for your results. So good luck to the supporters. Hope you have a fantastic end to the season. And get promoted through the playoffs, because it looks like that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's what we all want as well. Phil, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining me. All the best with whatever comes your way going forward as well, and maybe we'll catch up again soon as well.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you very much.